The skin suit hung from a meat hook in the doorway, positioned so it would be the first thing police saw when they entered the house. This wasn't a movie set or a Halloween decoration. This was the final act of Katherine Knight, the first woman in Australian history to be sentenced to life without parole. On the night of February 29, 2000, in the small town of Aberdeen, New South Wales, she committed a crime so horrific that veteran detectives who'd worked murders for decades would need counseling after walking through that blood-soaked house. Katherine Knight grew up in a slaughterhouse, not metaphorically, but literally. Born in 1955 in Tenterfield, she learned to wield a knife before she could properly write her name. Her father, Ken Knight, was an alcoholic who sexually abused her mother, Barbara, forcing her to flee repeatedly, only to return each time. Young Katherine watched, absorbed, learned. By 16, she'd dropped out of school to work at the local abattoir, the same slaughterhouse where she'd played as a child. Her co-workers remembered how she'd caress the knives, how she'd name her favorites, how she'd hang the entire set above her bed each night like other girls might hang posters of pop stars. She could bone out a carcass faster than any man, recalled a former supervisor, and she'd smile the whole time. John Price was supposed to be different from the others. A gentle giant at 6'2", he worked as a miner and had a reputation in Aberdeen for being soft-spoken, reliable, the kind of man who'd help anyone fix their car on a Sunday afternoon. When he met Katherine in 1994, she'd already left a trail of violence through 3 marriages. Her first husband, David Kellett, she'd tried to strangle on their wedding night because he fell asleep after only having sex 3 times. Her second, David Saunders, had his skull fractured with a frying pan. Her third, John Chillingworth, woke up once to find her sitting on his chest with a knife to his throat, whispering, "I'll kill you if you ever leave." But Price didn't know these details when Katherine's green eyes locked onto his at the local RSL club. He only saw a woman who laughed at his jokes, who cooked him elaborate meals, who made him feel alive again after his recent divorce. The relationship started with passion and descended into hell. Katherine decorated his house with animal skins and skulls, turned his living room into what visitors called a cave of death. She'd fly into rages over nothing. A glance at another woman coming home 5 minutes late, putting too much sugar in his tea. "You've got to get out, mate," his friend Barry Ruffin warned him after seeing Katherine chase Price with a knife through his own backyard. "She's going to kill you." Price knew it too. In the weeks before his death, he'd taken out an restraining order against her, telling his co-workers, "If I don't show up for work, you'll know what happened." He'd started recording their arguments, hiding the tapes in his truck. On one recording, later played in court, you can hear Katherine's voice, eerily calm. "I'm going to get you. You'll never see it coming." February 29, 2000, started like any other day. Price went to work at the mine, joked with his colleagues, ate his packed lunch at noon. Katherine spent the day preparing. She bought new lingerie, withdrew money from Price's account using his stolen ATM card, picked up her favorite knife from the slaughterhouse. She told her daughter, "I've got something real special planned for Pricey tonight." At 6 p.m., Price arrived home to find Katherine dressed in the black negligee, candles lit throughout the house, his favorite meal on the table. They had sex. They watched television. At some point after 11 p.m., after Price had taken his sleeping medication and drifted off, Katherine retrieved her boning knife. The first stab wound was to his chest while he slept, but it wasn't deep enough to kill instantly. Price woke up, tried to escape. The blood patterns told the story. Handprints on the hallway walls where he'd tried to steady himself, arterial spray across the ceiling, where she'd severed major vessels, a pool by the front door where he'd collapsed trying to reach the handle. The pathologist counted at least 37 stab wounds. But Katherine wasn't finished. Using the skills she'd perfected over decades at the slaughterhouse, she dragged Price's body back to the bedroom, positioned him on his back, and began the methodical process of skinning him. She peeled the skin away in one complete piece from neck to ankles, the way she'd done to countless cattle and pigs. She hung it from the architrave in the hallway, the empty face sagging like a deflated mask. In the kitchen, she decapitated him and began preparing dinner. She carved flesh from his buttocks, seasoned it with salt and pepper, and cooked it in a pan with vegetables: potatoes, pumpkin, zucchini, cabbage. She arranged 2 plates at the dining table, each with a portion of the cooked flesh, vegetables artfully arranged around it. She placed name cards by each plate: one for Price's adult son, Jonathan, one for his daughter, Rebecca. A third portion she ate herself, though she'd later claim no memory of this. On the kitchen counter, she left a note: "Time got you back Jonathan for wrapping. Sick my daughter. You owe me $2,000 for the microwave." The accusation against Jonathan was completely fabricated, investigators would later confirm. Detective Bob Wells was first through the door the next morning, responding to concerns from Price's employer when he hadn't shown up for work. A 30-year veteran, Wells made it 3 steps into the house before running back outside to vomit. "In my entire career," he'd later testify, "I've never seen such a deliberate, calm, methodical desecration of a human being." They found Katherine comatose on the bed, having taken an overdose of pills in an apparent suicide attempt. Empty pill bottles were scattered around her, along with photographs of Price's children. She'd positioned herself carefully, wearing a clean nightgown, her hair brushed, as if staging her own death scene. The trial began in October 2001, drawing media from around the world. Katherine, recovered from her overdose, sat in the defendant's box showing no emotion as prosecutors detailed the horror of that night. Her defense team attempted to argue diminished responsibility due to dissociative amnesia. She claimed to remember nothing after having sex with Price, but the evidence told a different story. The methodical skinning, the careful cooking, the placed settings, the note, all pointed to someone in full control of their actions. "This wasn't a crime of passion," the prosecutor argued. "This was ritual slaughter." The jury was offered counseling before viewing the crime scene photographs. Several jurors wept. One had to be excused from the courtroom. Justice Barry O'Keefe delivered the verdict with visible disgust. "The last minutes of his life must have been a time of abject terror and total helplessness. The prisoner showed no mercy. She should receive none." Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a sentence never before given to a woman in Australian history. As the verdict was read, Katherine Knight smiled. She turned to her legal team and said, loud enough for the gallery to hear, "I still loved him. I would have taken him back." The courtroom erupted in gasps and cries from Price's family. His sister Val spoke to reporters outside. "She's not human. She's a monster wearing human skin." Today, Katherine Knight remains in Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, where guards report she's a model prisoner who teaches knitting classes and tends the prison garden. She's never expressed remorse. In her cell, she keeps newspaper clippings about her crime in a scrapbook, showing them to new inmates like trophies. John Price's children still live with the horror of what was done to their father, refusing all interview requests, trying to exist in a world where their tragedy became international entertainment. The house at 84 St. Andrew Street in Aberdeen stood empty for years before finally being demolished, but locals say that on still nights you can still smell something cooking. Katherine Knight proved that evil doesn't always announce itself with warning signs we recognize. Sometimes it knows exactly how to season the vegetables. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.